From the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, welcome to Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
And a very good morning, St. Martin. I'm Cedric Peterson of the Department of Communication under the Ministry of General Affairs. Welcome to this edition of Prime Minister Talks. I'm, of course, joined with the Prime Minister of St. Martin and the Minister responsible for the Ministry of General Affairs, the Honorable Sylvaria Jacobs. PM, great to have you on board and be here with you today.
Good morning to you. Good day, St. Martin. Good day, Cedric. It's great to be back. You wouldn't imagine how much I've missed being here as we were chit-chatting before. I love production. It's part of my history and hopefully part of my future. For me, being able to share information with the general public of St. Martin is key to the understanding of what we're going through as a country and to even offer some inspiration and hope. So thank you for joining me back here on PM Talks, and it's always a pleasure to work with you.
Always a pleasure to work with you as well, Prime Minister, and of course to join the people of St. Martin in this information session. As you indicated, we want to jump right into our first segment that deals with the subject matter of the proposed Caribbean Reform Entity. I would like you to first please explain in a few details concerning, well, first of all, what is the proposed Caribbean Reform Entity? And tell us a little bit about the proposal and consensus kingdom law. Let's start with defining. What is it?
Right. So, Cedric, at first glance, a superficial reader could easily get the impression that about this proposal, the kingdom law concerns, if not solely, then surely primarily the supervision of the proper use of the Dutch government's financial support to the countries of Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin in lieu of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the very first consideration of this law in the statutes that an independent of the law itself is that an independent governing entity is going to be established to support the execution of the reforms of a governmental nature, the realization of sustainable government finances, and the strengthening of the resilience of the economies in the countries, as well as strengthening the legal constitutional grounding and organization that is necessary for that. In addition, this entity is, in analyzing the function and the duties of it as proposed, can be concluded that, right, the entity will be able to deal directly with citizens, private enterprises, companies, government, and or privately owned, and thereby completely bypass government. So I know it's, you're asking the questions here today, but is it not that are those that I'm talking about just now not governmental tasks? Mm-hmm. Doesn't it actually sound like this entity being proposed by the Dutch government is actually coming to take over and reduce the authority of the ministers and just render them as rubber stamps, and even by such render the powers of our own parliament, which the people of St. Martin elect, null and void? And for that, all of the countries of Aruba and Curacao and St. Martin have a serious problem with it. Not with the fact that you're offering assistance, but with the fact that you're offering assistance in a take it or leave it fashion, trying to cloak it in a consensus law, which by definition we should have sat down and discussed and agreed upon prior to it reaching to this stage, which has not happened. And by all intents and purposes, all attempts that we have made to do just that, come to an actual consensus since being presented with this 3-4 days before July 10th, have been pushed aside, and it's being propagandized from the Netherlands as if we're not willing to negotiate. A negotiation means that you actually sit down, have a discussion, and we can come to a middle ground even. Or if we agree on a 3/4 ground, it is that we've had that discussion. You're being told that, nope, it is this or nothing.
So when you look at the situation, and of course watch how it's playing out even here at home within our parliament, having the conversation among the members of parliament, right. And you look at how far-reaching will these powers be. You did mention something that I picked up on that I would like to ask you concerning the fact of the propaganda aspect.
Yes.
The Netherlands is actually
for
a
the
year
first
before
time
their own elections. on elections. If you look at it, the Netherlands is a year out, if not a year into what's supposed to be an election year for them.
Right.
So how do you view this in going forward? Now, I know we're trying to look at this from a legal perspective. First of all, establish for us what we are doing to ensure that we're standing simply for our rights.
And that is exactly, Cedric, what we're doing. The powers are so far-reaching. And from a first-hand perspective, you get to see now how political it is. Our politics and in the discussions, I've been in now discussions with the Netherlands. I've traveled several times. The first couple of times with the Minister of Finance, one time to the World Bank, another time to the Netherlands. And then my last trip, I was, not with the Minister of Finance, but definitely had great support. And you see that politics is all local. So right now, the political atmosphere in the Netherlands is a preparation for re-election. And right. So St. Martin and the rest of the Caribbean islands are being treated like the rude children, are being treated like we got to whip them in shape. We can't be wasting the Dutch taxpayers' money and this and that and the other. And listen, we got into this arena to make these same changes. We have been working on a governing program that is aligning with a national development vision that is 10 years, that has looked at what were the goals of the past 10 years and pulled a red thread through it, dragged them all together, and is currently going through that stakeholder process, which is necessary. If people would think about politics, the Dutch politicians took almost 10 years to do their pension reforms. Yet, every time they've had a quote-unquote negotiation for assistance with St. Martin, they have put the execution of the pension reforms according to their standards as a prerequisite. Back in 2017, William said no. In 2019 to 20, we are saying that we would like to have amicable, honest, open negotiations and discussions, and that is not happening, Cedric. Sadly, that is not happening. So the legal aspects have to be looked at because the powers are very, very, very far-reaching. This is another additional bureaucratic layer, and it would be coexisting on the same level as a whole other government. And I don't think the people of St. Martin, after having fought together with our Antilles, we had an Antilles, there's a 1954 resolution that the Antilles came into being. And even the whole decolonization process, I'm learning, has not been finalized. So legally, we have instruments, and we will use all instruments within our power to at least be recognized in these negotiations as true partners.
Excellent. First segment there, dealing with this matter, and of course, shedding some light on the fact that in this fight that we're in, that we are doing the right things to ensure that we are standing on the right footing legally within the Kingdom of the Netherlands and where we stand and standing for ourselves as a country. We're at our first break, Prime Ministers. Let's go ahead and take that right now. When we get back into the second segment, we're going to get into that article that was written by the State Secretary in the Netherlands, basically saying, hey, listen, Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin, take it or leave it. We're going to get into that discussion when we get back in the second segment of Prime Minister Talks. St. Martin, stay tuned. You're listening to the 21st edition of Prime Minister Talks right here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9. Stay with us.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylveria Jacobs.
Coronavirus is most likely to spread from person to person when we come into close contact with one another. We can all help stop the spread by keeping our distance. This means do not shake hands or exchange physical greetings, and wherever possible, stay at least 1.5 to 2 meters away from others. It's also really important to practice good hygiene, especially after being in public places. Together we can help stop the spread and stay healthy. Visit stmartingov.org/coronavirus or call 914 to learn more. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Government of St. Martin. The following public service announcement brings to you a few of the many unsung heroes in the medical profession who are working tirelessly to put our needs ahead of theirs and in the midst of this battle to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Listen closely to their message so that we all can remain safe.
Good day, General Public of St. Martin. I'm Dr. Felix Holliday, General Surgeon and Medical Director of the St. Martin Medical Center. I'm staying at work for you, so please stay home for me. Stay safe.
My name is Christina Jacobs Burkle. I'm the Junior Patient Care Manager, COVID-19 affects everyone. So please, everyone, let's protect everyone and stay home.
Hi, I'm Meandra Hazel, ICU nurse. I'm a frontline nurse and I'm asking you to be a frontline citizen. Please stay home, save a life. Help me to help you.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the St. Martin Medical Center and the government of St. Martin.
Gen yon maladi nan le monde entier ki rele coronavirus ou bien COVID-19. Li bay problem respiratoire. Sa pou n'kembe nan tèt nou se ki jan pou n'proteje tèt ou ak fami ou. Kontrole santé ou pendant 14 jours si nou te voyaje kite peyi ya. Sou vin développer la fièvre ou ap tousse ou bien gen difficulté respire, rete la kayou pas sorti. Rele docteur sou gen numéro téléphone docteur. Pratike façon hygiénique pour tousse ak pou lave men. Évitez entrer en contact avec moun kap tousse ou bien kap estene. Sou gen nécessité assistance médicale, rele avant. Expliquez docteur ou bien département urgence lan ki jan senti ou. Expliquez yo si ou te voyager. Expliquez yo si ou pense ou te entrer en contact ak yon moun ki peut-être te exposé à virus lan. Pour plus information, rele 914. Annonce publique sa sorti dans santé, contrôle ak prévention maladie et gouvernement Saint-Martin.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
A very good morning, St. Martin. You are listening to Prime Minister Talks on our Saturday morning edition, PM. I feel like as if this is our morning breakfast chat at the waterfront, like how we used to do back in the day.
Maybe we should make it a thing.
I think we should. You know, and a Saturday morning conversation with the Prime Minister might be exactly what the country needs, especially dealing with this pandemic situation. And you know what I mean? So you never know.
Idea. Look at that. Look at you.
Exactly.
Look at
you
you
know
coming
what I mean?
up with
Always thinking ahead. Let's get into the second segment. As we indicated, there was an article from the State Secretary, Knups, basically saying that the Netherlands will not back down. And Aruba and Curacao and St. Martin has to agree, simply that, or you don't get further liquidity support. What is your take? I'm sure you've expressed this many times before. I want to give you the opportunity again to let us know, what is your take as the leader of this country when it comes to this proposal?
Wow, Cedric, I tell you, it's been amazing to me. I was not in the leadership role back in 2017 when this attitude was brought forth. I was in Parliament back in 2015 when government had agreed to a protocol that Parliament was totally against and saw it as a usurpation of our powers and of that of Parliament to make that decision, because Parliament is who approves or disapproves amends laws, not based on some direction coming from the kingdom or coming from, you know, unless it's a United Nations law or a law that stretches in that kind of a sense where the human rights, et cetera, is concerned. This is something now about our core activities and our core responsibilities as a government and as a parliament. And the people did not elect us to be rubber stamps. And so I seriously took offense to that. The manner in which that was done, I found it very, very disrespectful. No reasons, and I'm not going to say excuses, because we just came in 2019 as a government. We've had several governments that have attempted, but based on our, let's call it, immaturity as a new country and seeing how that lack of stability would cause even more problems, we went through that growing phase. We are finally feeling like we have the stability we need. And they actually laughed in my face when I said we have stability now. And I found that offensive, because if we look back at the history of the Netherlands, when they first became let go of the monarchy and went into democracy, they had a history of exactly what we went through. And it is basically based on the way our constitution is set up, the way our elections are set up, etc., which we have inherited and kept. So electoral reform is still something we need to work on. Several other reforms are things we truly believe in, but this take it or leave it attitude, do it the way we say, in the timeline we say, focusing on these things and ensuring that you do it, that is totally unacceptable. Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin have stood strong in that, and I'm very, very proud of that fact. Even though several separation and division tactics have been used, again, it is politically motivated out of The Hague. And the people of St. Martin need to understand, just like we don't like when our own local politicians bicker and fight and go against each other and hurt our people, we cannot allow for another political entity, keep that in mind, political entity called the Dutch government, which has excessive powers within the kingdom, because we have been disputing the regulation. Remember, we talked about that in the very beginning, Cedric, in terms of there is no proper dispute regulation. That is still being disputed. The Raad van State is still discussing that. And here we are today being told, we're going to help you. COVID-19 is hitting the whole world. We saw how the Dutch government, along with some other governments, handled the needy European states within the European Union. And that battle that went on in the media. But St. Martin, Curaçao, and Aruba is not getting that kind of media coverage in the world for the Netherlands to be shamed into doing the right thing. And I think that is unfortunate. But what I can do is ensure that at least the people of St. Martin know the truth, that it is not a political game being played internally in St. Martin. Thank God that the Parliament of St. Martin supports the government completely. When we've had the discussions in Parliament, I've had several closed-door discussions with them, Cedric, because certain things you cannot divulge publicly, or of course, your negotiating partners also has that information. But I felt it pertinent, even when I was in the Netherlands, to meet via this virtual medium, which is, I guess, a thank you to COVID that we know to use these mediums more. And we have been having very good conversations. And I'm seeing the Parliament also taking a stand as to no, and collaborating with Aruba and Curaçao as well to make a strong stance in The Hague as to this is where our countries want to go. And we need to do this in a respectful manner, honoring what the statutes stand for.
And that's a point I wanted to emphasize on, that collaboration of Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin. It seems like as if the tactic of divisiveness between the three autonomous countries within the kingdom is also being played out as well.
Correct.
Talk more concerning the actual stance together between the three islands, how that's working out.
So as prime ministers, we are in a constant discussion almost daily. Thank God for, WhatsApp chat and those types of things. We even have, conference calls on a regular basis. We touch bases. Have you spoken with them today? Have you spoken with them today? Our legal teams on the technical level are also in the discussion. I have used some of the arguments that the legal teams of Curaçao have used, even in my spreektekst back in July. I have shared my spreektekst, which is discussion document when we go into the Kingdom Council of Ministers with my colleagues. They have shared their Council of advices. I have, it really is a collaborative effect. What is per island the situation is that all three parliaments are on one line. Good. They are not accepting this top-down strangulation of the democracy of the islands. What is different is how long can we survive individually as countries financially. So I think that was being used against Aruba. Aruba clearly had great debt, and we felt that, they would have been the most vulnerable. And I think that was being used. However, the Aruban Parliament is not budging. We believe, and you're hearing that a lot out there as well, that there is an obligation to assist the islands in the kingdom that the Netherlands is backing off from. That discussion also has to be had. But at the end of the day, can the Netherlands continue to walk around and say that we are benevolent while allowing the people of the countries to be strangled due to the power moves that they are making? This is clear that it is a power move. Cedric, no one can dispute this. Every legal advice we've gotten has pointed to that. Our legal team on St. Martin has pointed to that. And so we will continue to walk the legal roads, but publicizing this, something that I've noticed is we want to have, when the discussions are encouraged, they must remain totally private. We may not divulge. Yeah, and the minute you divulge, you see that, hey, we got more money than you to change the narrative. And so that narrative is being put out there that there's a bucket of money that will assist the countries. 7 years of money will be available. All you have to do is allow us to usurp your powers. And I think when the state secretary in our last conversation said to me, I said, but we've made a counter proposal, and I'm very surprised and you know, democracy, you know, democratically thinking, how are you not even looking at this counter proposal, which is also a consensus law, but it does not strangle the countries. It regulates your funding. It gives you the monitoring aspect you want, but it does not remove the powers of the countries. And no, we're not looking at that. The only thing I'm mandated to discuss is what was approved in the council minutes of the meeting of the 10th of July. And I found that to be very, very, and like, oh, you have time to be in the media talking about the legalities, but you have not finalized all the points that you have to check off for the entity, for the second tranche, for instance. And it's through that, not having finalized those discussions, which our Minister of Finance was in a constant battle with his ministry and cabinet, with the CFT, in terms of the interpretation of what had to be carried out. And initially you hear one thing, then BZCAS says another thing. So there was a constant back and forth. And then the impression is painted up there, oh, St. Martin isn't doing anything. But what we as St. Martin are trying to do is that fund that we were getting for tranche 2 is majority to assist with the people in the private sector. And that SSRP condition that they wanted us to change would actually have less people benefiting, or benefiting to a lesser degree, 20% less, as a matter of fact. So we're dealing with something that is hurting our people and fighting for our people and being beat across the head with it. And we find that totally unfair to the people of St. Martin, when on the other hand, you're saying, I'm trying to help you. And it is exactly the most vulnerable that this is hurting.
Prime Minister, we're going to take our second break for the program. We're going to get back into, that's not a problem. We're going to talk about the Caribbean reform entity and the establishment of it, and of course, the transparency of this entity when we get back in our next segment. St. Martin, stay with us. You're listening to Prime Minister Talks right here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
The following public service announcement brings to you a few of the many unsung heroes in the medical profession who are working tirelessly to put our needs ahead of theirs and in the midst of this battle to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Listen closely to their message so that we all can remain safe.
Hello, my fellow St. Martiners. I am Nurse Carty from the Ambulance Department. We are now facing a very crucial time. Please adhere to the instructions given, follow good hand hygiene, social distancing, and please stay at home.
My name is Angelo Martina. I'm one of the supervisors of the emergency room. Let's fight this. Stay home.
I am Dr. Sameh Nadari. I am internist at St. Martin Medical Center. I am here for you. I am at work for you. So please stay at home for us.
My name is Andrele Ellis, pharmacist of Kale Pharmacy in the St. Martin Medical Center. Please stay home.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the St. Martin Medical Center and the government of St. Martin.
Hay un brote de enfermedad respiratoria en todo el mundo causada por el coronavirus COVID-19. Tenemos algunos consejos de salud que debe tener en cuenta para protegerse y proteger a su familia. Controle su salud durante 14 días después de viajar. Si desarrolla fiebre, tos o tiene dificultad para respirar, quédese en casa y notifique a su médico. Después de toser, proceda a la higiene de las manos y evite el contacto cercano con personas que tosan o estornuden. Si necesita atención médica urgente, asegúrese de llamar con anticipación para informar su estado de salud antes de visitar a su médico o a la sala de emergencias. Notifique de sus síntomas, historial de viaje o si cree que estuvo expuesto a una persona con COVID-19. Para información adicional, llame al 914. Este anuncio es dirigido a usted a través del Centro de Servicios Públicos por el Control y Prevención de Enfermedades y el Gobierno de San Martín.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Prime Minister, as I teased in the previous segment, is this entity, if it's established, do you really know what steps and measures will be taken to ensure the transparency of the entity?
Okay, well, first of all, the Netherlands cannot just impose the entity. Okay. Yeah. So they still are insisting on a political agreement to be able to move forward so that it can then, the document can move forward. And we're saying we cannot give a political agreement with it in this current state. So basically where that is concerned, it's an impasse. If they could, they would have already done that. And that is why this proposal is packaged in such a way that if they insist that St. Martin, Curacao and agree, St. Martin or Aruba and Curacao agrees, or they won't receive any funds, that we are then with our backs against the wall. And then what do you call that? It sounds a little bit like extortion to me. They know that we're in serious financial, let's say, limitations at the moment. I think that it's been calculated that at the point of bankruptcy, they can swoop in and apply Article 51 of the Kingdom Charter. If you've been paying attention to the debates in Parliament, that has been brought up by more than one member of Parliament. So we know that that is there. That's the only way they would be able to impose it. But even then, we would fight it. How fitting would it be if all three of us, you know, for them, if they could just bring all six right back into the colonies that we were, right back under mommy's wing and settle us back for another 100 years. Is that what we're looking for? We know who, you know, we want to deal with the entity. We would like to oversee the implementation and the execution of a set of reforms that the government of St. Martin has identified that we need. So our reforms over our timeline. And yes, we do need financing as well as resources to be able to do so. And we're willing to discuss how that should be done. But in no way should it, you know, touch on our autonomy. So we definitely want to move forward, economically diversifying how we are earning on St. Martin. We're seeing how vulnerable the one-pillar society, our one-pillar economy is. And we, of course, want to improve sustainability on St. Martin. We're seeing opportunities too, but you need investment for that. And we have to go through them also for investment funds. And whenever I bring up that point, that investment funds have been systematically withheld from St. Martin from 2016 onwards, that is pushed aside. So whenever I can highlight, listen, the blame for the lack of execution of reforms lies on both sides of the Atlantic. We will admit that as governments, you know, behind closed doors, but in public, the narrative is always there's a lack on the Caribbean side, and they start to focus on corruption or whatever the case is. And we have put so much in place over the last years to deal with our corruption. Question should be, how do you deal with yours, Netherlands? How do you deal with yours? It's a constant sweeping under the rug, move the person to another lucrative position, and that doesn't get the type of highlight that it requires down here in the Caribbean. The Dutch people know it, but our people think we're dealing with perfect politicians. At the end of the day, all of them are politicians as well as we are, and local politicians have to fight for the local situation, and that is what we continue to do.
And I agree, we actually should focus on the politics that make sense, clear the ones that don't and disturb progress, so that the information to the public remains clear as to what's taking place. The government of the Netherlands is saying that the authorities that will be granted to the Caribbean Reform Entity will sufficiently guarantee the country's autonomy, and that the entity will not take over authority of Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin in the areas of legislation and regulations. But it will have a supportive function and an act in a supervisory role. PM, can you give us your take on this statement being made by the Kingdom partners?
Well, they're saying it in a very disguised manner. You hear the term supervisory role. We already have the CFT in its supervisory role, and we can see how it is actually dictating. It is not supervising. It is not just advising. If we look in the legislation, it's supposed to advise governments. It's supposed to advise the parliament, report, as a matter of fact, to the parliament, and that doesn't happen. It's basically the way we say it, or you don't go further, and that has been the case. So it's being disguised. What do we have to show for? We've just finalized the Integrity Chamber. That's also a supervisory role. We have the World Bank coordinating together with the St. Martin and Dutch government, the steering committee to execute the projects there. Again, it's a supervisory role, but if there is no consensus, the projects don't get done. So St. Martin can identify projects, take it to the supervisory role of the steering committee. And if one of the entities, and we've not seen that the World Bank is holding back for the most part, we see which part of the supervisory tripartite is keeping back the progress of certain projects. We have recently asked for an extension of the education training project to assist those who have been hit hard in the tourism sector, and that has spread even further than it did after the hurricane. But no, that cannot be extended, you know. But if you come with, and I think one of the members of parliament said it very clearly, however, when the suggestion comes from the Dutch side, it goes, because at the end of the day, if it benefits us, we're going to agree. But when I'm not understanding the reasoning behind them refusing to extend a good working program that assisted people well after the hurricane, when we're now facing a similar situation without the destruction of our infrastructure. So I think some of them have failed. And despite that, we are still tied to it. We're also looking at the legalities of being held to that, seeing that that decolonization process was not finished. But we continue to fight as government, let's say, with the tools that we have in front of us, and ensuring that we are able to move forward. The transparency that we talked about, I don't think I touched enough on it there. We don't think that there's enough transparency now in the way certain things are happening, that the countries are seeing like, hey, this was not the way this was intended. But when there's an interpretation discussion, it's their interpretation that has precedence. So I'm really concerned about that, that they would see it, that it's another supervisory role needed. They are upset that they didn't get to shine with the World Bank $500 million. And now they want to use a different way to do it, but still not allowing the countries, like we did in the past after disasters, to manage our own movements or what we wanted to work on. And that's what we're fighting for.
PM, we have actually run out of time in this edition of the program. It has definitely gone by quickly. I want to give you the opportunity to give your final words, close out the program, and possibly look at subject matters we can talk about in the next program. Let us know.
Yes, I'm so sorry we ran out of time. There's so much to talk about on this topic. I tried to stick to a bit of a script today, but it didn't work. I really wanted to go into, in this program, our counter proposal. And I think that that's what we can focus on the next time. I would also encourage the people of St. Martin to tune in when we have those information programs. I've had the SG and his legal team also working on informing the population of St. Martin. And so in the coming week, I'm hoping we can make the opportunity to talk a little more about our counter proposal, how we see that it could have worked, and how we expect that we will continue to move forward, also looking at other options. So I want to thank you, the people of St. Martin, for tuning in. Once you hear this, play it over, look for more information, follow discussions on it, whether on social media or on our radios, and we will keep the people of St. Martin informed. We will continue to look towards the vision that St. Martin can be a multi-pillar economy where all of us have the opportunity to grow, to learn, to actually thrive and prosper. That is our goal, and that's what we're looking for, without that top-down, back to colonialism days.
Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Saveria Jacobs, thank you so much for being a part of this edition of your program, Prime Minister Talks. It's great to have this conversation with you this morning. So we look forward to our next program. And of course, we invite you, our viewers and listeners, to be sure to tune in for the rebroadcast of Prime Minister Talks right here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM. And be sure to look out for the video on demand that will be posted to the Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin. That's facebook.com/SXMGOV, or on the government's website, stmartingov.org. So until our next edition of the program, and on behalf of the Cabinet, the Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Saveria Jacobs, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks for tuning in.